Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of the Purple Hyacinth podcast, Faithful Friend. And we are with Laura and Fwoot.
Hey, this is Laura.
Awesome. So last episode ended with Lauren being out on patrol and them finding a woman who had done something. We don't quite know yet. And we're continuing with that storyline. So the woman's running away. Will and Lauren are running after her. They nod to each other. And we get this interesting scene where we kind of see how good their training has been and how much they've trained together. So we have zipping around, they're obviously very, very fast, and they've turned into lions and more zipping, jumping on roofs. I mean, it's very cute because it's over the top, exaggerated, like ninja-like, but it's cute. It's funny. Lauren's jumping on roofs. I mean, she can do like, what is it called? Parkour.
Yeah, she's like super strong, nice parkour skills.
I remember like many months ago, like almost a year ago, there were people trying to figure out how she was physically able to do that. I don't remember what conclusion they came to, but I'm pretty sure it was something along the lines of Lauren is Spider-Man. There is no actual physical way she could do this.
Yeah. I take it like, for it's part of the story. It's just funny. It's exaggerated. When she and Lauren and Kieran like bounce along the rooftops, like clearly they're not bouncing. It's just cute.
Don't do this at home, kids.
Right. So Lauren's bounding along on top while Will is pursuing on the ground. The woman has her dagger and is running away. But then Lauren jumps right in front of her. So she is caught between the two of them and cannot escape. And Will says, surrender and we'll resolve this calmly, ma'am. Which I love because Will is such a cutie pie. He treats everybody like a gentleman, right? He's like, courteous, calm, calls her ma'am, which I know Fwoot, you're probably gonna have a lot to say, but I like my
I don't about that. Like calling her ma'am, that's fine. It's just a sign of respect for someone.
Not I mean about ma'am, I mean about this whole interaction. But the truth is, okay, we'll talk about it. He says an entire squad of police officers, so you do that, and there's no use trying to run. And they both got their guns pointed at her. She has her dagger out. Will says you have the right to remain silent. Anything you can and say will be held against you in court. And then he nods to Lauren, who's nodding behind him. She still has her dagger out. She's sweating. She's nervous. Lauren runs and says you have the right to an attorney. And then there's a very nice juxtaposition of kind of like flashbacks of them training together, and it just shows you how well they've trained and how they learn to coordinate their actions. So you see Lauren in training running while the Lauren in real life is also running. She picks up her hand while Will also rushes forward and says, if you cannot afford one. And then they disarm her. They knock the dagger out of her hands, and there's a very lovely image of Lauren kicking it out of her hands. And the top part of her is her now in present time, and the bottom part of it is her training with Will. It's really nicely done. And
the visual language is like beautiful. It's like beautiful storytelling.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite sequences just because of how the past and present are both tied in together.
Yeah, you see like the trust that Will and Lauren have together. And they're not a duo that are focused on all the time, but we occasionally get hints of how close they really are and how much they've grown up together, and we'll get more as the story goes on. But it's nice to see that they too have a bond that is important and present.
And like we know that they were childhood friends at this point in the story, but again, like Mindy said, we're really seeing it in action and how these two work together rather than being told it.
Yeah, they have a whole system. Oh, sorry, what was that, Mindy?
Go ahead. I'm fine.
They have a whole system worked out between them. Like they don't even need to verbally communicate anymore. Sorry, I'm trying to navigate around my cat. They just like nod and they make eye contact and they just kind of do their thing.
By the way, Fwoot, speaking of the power of platonic friendships, right? Which originally was not supposed to be platonic, right? But
if Lauren and Will were Loon, I think Loon by now would have taken down the Phantom Scythe because
Will would never join
just
Loon,
work so well together. Like, it wouldn't be first night because they both have their own problems to sort through, but they would be able to get it after a while.
They probably would. Their interrogations would definitely go better. I don't think Will would ever join them because he's so rule bound, but they wouldn't have this action going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Although Kieran's like connections with the Phantom Scythe is part of what makes Loon work so well.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess Lauren would have to infiltrate the Phantom Scythe to make that work.
Yeah, that's true.
And one other thing I think is really nice about Lauren and Will working together so well in this scene is like they know how to quickly and effectively disarm the thief, the criminal here. Like, they take turns reading her rights, right? So she's like looking back and forth. She's like, oh, you're talking. Oh, wait, no, you're talking. Oh, wait, you're talking. And so she like doesn't know where to look. And while she's distracted, that's when they like move in to take the knife away and then handcuff her. And Lauren catches the knife after she kicks that out of her hand. So it all happens really quickly. She kicks it out of the criminal's hand, and then Will handcuffs her, and then Lauren catches the knife in the next panel. It's like, whoa, it all happens so quickly.
Mm-hmm. It really emphasizes the effectiveness of the police and the training that they've gone through, especially since we're shown the training montage or
right
scene alongside. So
right, yeah. Which again speaks to this like really beautiful visual storytelling of the history that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we continue down, there's someone, William Hawks, Lauren Sinclair, impressive teamwork. You both have passed your last physical aptitudes test. So this is obviously in the past. You've met all the requirements to enter the intensive training program. So I think also, not only is it like really beautiful visual storytelling, I think it's also a way for us to like kind of peek into what their muscle memories would be like. Like, they've probably done this routine so many times, and it like feels really familiar and maybe a little nostalgic for the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so like maybe this is some of the things that they're thinking of, like flashes of these memories are coming to mind when they do this together. Because when at the end, I'm sorry, Fwoot, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go.
Oh, okay, I was just gonna say at the end of the previous episode, I was like, oh, why did Will choose Lauren specifically instead of having Kim join him? And then we see very clearly why, because they work so well together.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure where this was mentioned, but we know that one of them at least did graduate early. And so I think it might have been Will.
Yes, I actually have that in my notes. Yeah, that was in episode 6. Both of them graduated early. Will said, I wonder if we should have graduated early in episode 6. And Lauren said, we would have been far too bored otherwise. We were already driving our instructors mad. So actually, to your point, Fwoot, I wonder if this kind of ties in with what we're going to see later on with kind of Will's stuff that he's going on. But like Lauren, I imagine, wanted to graduate early because she really wanted to take down the Phantom Scythe. She's like really driven by this obsession to avenge Dylan's murder. But like, why would Will want to graduate early? Why would he want to push himself?
I can tell you one reason why. It starts with an S, but
and ends with an R because it's spoilers.
Yeah,
technically another S.
Yes, so we get more into his backstory later. But at this point, like, were they just super competitive with each other? Did they just like want to one up each other and just so that's why they graduated early? Or were they just both really driven? Or is it both driven? Both.
I think they're driven. I don't see them being very competitive. Will, I think, is competitive, but I don't think he's competitive against his friends. I think he's just more competitive with himself.
That's a good point.
The general benchmark or whatever.
Yeah. And
the fact here that they've met the requirements to enter the intensive training program, like they're doing well. They're not doing the regular training program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And going back to their conversation in episode 6, Will said, true, but who would have thought we'd go from playing cops and robbers in your mother's garden to this, in reference to the murder that they were called out to. But like they've been doing this sort of interaction and like this sort of play with each other like their whole life, like childhood, and then they went to the police academy together, and now they're working together. This is something that like they're like super familiar with each other in doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this episode just really speaks volumes to Lauren and Will's relationship and their bond, and just we've seen Lauren and Kim be close, but a lot of times you don't see as much of Will and Lauren being close. And this is one of those scenes where we really get to explore their relationship, and we as an audience get to see what it's like for them.
Yeah, it was nice to see that. So now we're back in the present, and Lauren looks out of the corner of her eye and she sees this giant bag of jewelry. And she says, "You have refined taste in jewelry, but your shoplifting skills lack that level of elegance." I'm like, oh, it's a burn. And Will opens the radio. He's like, "Lieutenant Hawk speaking. We are at the intersection of Delft Street and St. Isidore Street. The suspect is in custody. Please send a..." And then she yells out loud. She says, "It's for my mother." She's lying. "Please, I know what I did is wrong." And that's true. "But she's ill and I need the money to pay for her treatment." And that's a lie. So Will looks at her kind of with like a shocked face, and you can tell like his sympathies are being tugged, because he doesn't know that she's lying. And you know, it's nice to see that. It's nice to see that Will has a heart, right? I mean, I wouldn't expect otherwise of him. And he clearly has stopped talking because the radio says Lieutenant Hawks, and he like shakes his head and he says, "Yes, sorry, bring the car, thank you." And you can tell this is disturbing him emotionally, because Will is a sweetie pie and he has sympathy for her.
And he also knows, yeah, he also still is going to do his job. But we know from, I think also from episode 6, that his own mom has a lot of health problems. And so the fact that the criminal is like, "It's for my mom," he, yeah, it like really touches his heart.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that, by the way, which I can't believe I forgot. But yeah, it was 100%.
Yeah, and up to this point, besides in episode 6, it doesn't really seem like there's much conflict for Will yet, at least, because Lauren and Kieran, obviously, they're loon. They have that conflict. Kim is leading on to something bigger, such as in episode 18, when she's shooting at the targets, and we see those dates and time stamps flashing in her mind. But otherwise, for Will, he's kind of a blank slate up to this point, and for much of season 1, he doesn't get too much attention conflict-wise. But yeah, this is a very telling moment for his character.
And I think, I don't remember exactly where it starts in the episode, but it's around this scene. The music starts. I know we can't play it on the podcast, but it's around this area, when Will is like taken aback by the idea of someone stealing so they could help pay for their sick mom's treatment. And the music, hold on, let me double check. The track I think is called Distant Music. Let me double check that. Which, as we go through, I feel like is super poignant to Will, because it basically just outlines Will's interaction from this point to, it doesn't go to the very end of the episode. Sorry. Yeah, Distance Music is what the track is called. So anyway, going back to where we left off, Will is like, "Yes, bring the car." I'm scrolling back up. And then Lauren can tell that Will is bothered. There's a panel of her looking at him and being concerned.
I love that face.
So I think that also tells us that she is aware of Will's struggle, again, because of episode 6. I don't really remember episode 6 that much, so it's a bit vague in my mind. But yeah, her also realizing that, and that Will would be bothered by the mother comment. Again, this episode is about their relationship, and there is a lot that we learn.
But to your point earlier, Mindy, like they're both super professional, so she doesn't bring that into her work. She directs her comments to the thief and says, even if it's for a noble cause, stealing is still illegal. She knows the thief was lying, but she doesn't bring that up. She just, even if it's for a noble cause, you know, stealing's still illegal. So you didn't hurt anyone, so you might be able to get away with just a fine, which is probably good news for the thief. You're more used to your mother, you know, hinting like, I know you're lying. Whoever, like whatever you did this for, you're more used to your mother if you're not behind bars. So maybe next time you should think twice before robbing a jewelry store in broad daylight.
Honestly, sorry.
Go ahead, yeah.
Oh, Lauren's comment about how stealing is still illegal even if it's for a noble cause, it's very ironic because
that's a good point.
She herself is working under the law, or like she herself is kind of violating the law with Loon. And
that is such a good point.
What they're doing may be, you know, slightly illegal.
Yep. Exactly.
And, you know, they say it's for a noble cause, but I can still see Lauren like going to jail for it and her being, and like the people jailing her for it being justified in what they're doing.
Yep. That's, yeah, very true. I mean, honestly, it's one of the, like, when people live in real life, you do questionable things. And, you know, sometimes maybe, like you said, you've called her hypocritical before, and this is an example of that, which is very real and very human. People are blind to everyone's faults but their own. But the truth is, I mean, she does knock herself, you know, down for doing that also. So, like, she does have complex feelings about that deal that she made. So it's not entirely blind, you know, like she does recognize that she's questionable.
That's true. And sorry, Fwoot, go ahead.
Oh no, you can go.
Well, I was just gonna point out that the thief robbed a jewelry store in broad daylight, like a big bag. Lauren called it, like, it was very an inelegant way of robbing something that's so elegant, like it was just very brash and open. So it was, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. It was easy to see and call out.
What Lauren does is more hidden.
Yeah, maybe that's what I was trying to say. I totally lost my train of thought. Sorry, go ahead, Fwoot.
I can't remember it either.
I remember my thought now. Okay, so the thief probably was pretty desperate. Like, we don't know. I have a couple thoughts. One, she was absolutely like pushed to a state of desperation where even though there was a whole like squad of police right outside the store, she went in and stole a big bag anyway. She wasn't thinking rationally at all. So it could be because she was very desperate and we don't know why exactly, because she lied about it. Or maybe she's trying to distract the police from something else going down. Is she trying to be is she trying to lead their attention away from something that is actually happening in the background? And maybe that's why she lied. This is for my mom. She just tried to think of something that would make her sound sympathetic. I don't know.
Maybe something that would let the police let her off with a warning, right?
Right.
So I have some thoughts on this, but I feel I can't really say it because it relates to stuff that happens later in the story. So, well, okay. I guess I'll discuss it when we get to that.
Okay. And then bringing it back to Lauren. So Lauren feels like she's super desperate. Like she doesn't know what else to do to try and get further in her investigation in Dylan's death and the train station tragedy. So she's also pushed to a state of desperation, and which is why she decided to team up with Kieran and form Loon. So I think that's where I was trying to go.
Oh yeah.
Going back up just a little bit, I was interested in the street names. I don't know if they have any significance. They're such odd names that I was like, maybe they are significant. So I looked them up, if you'll indulge me a couple minutes. So Delph Street, that I've never heard that word before.
ΔΕΛΦΗ.
Go ahead.
Well, Delft, I mean, it's not spelled the same, but like Delft is a city in Holland that was famous for producing, my husband's from Holland, that was producing the white and blue china. So probably not like related to this word, but still.
Yeah, I
I
did
was
find
thinking
that as well. Go on.
maybe like Delphi. It was the
The
town of the
Oracle.
oracle, like the city of the oracle in ancient Greece. So could be like prophecy.
Oh, it could be. Yeah, the Delphi relates specifically to Apollo from what I looked up, because I was looking up because there's Delphine, which is like dolphin,
Oh no.
and then Delphi, which is like relating to Apollo, the Greek sun god, and then Delft, which is that place in Holland. But the Irish word means like crockery, like pots and stuff that's like made out of pottery. And there's another definition for it.
Oh my god, that's genius.
I'm
The Apollo one.
lost in my notes. So Delft, when it's spelled DELF, could mean excavation, like in a mine or a quarry, or it could mean like a pond or a drain or a ditch. So the thief was excavating jewels from the store and trying to ditch the scene. I don't know.
Okay, that's clever, Laura.
I don't know. So there could be lots of different things about why they chose the word Delft for Delft Street. And then go on.
I think I have an idea, but I can't say it yet because it would be spoilers.
Oh no, I'm so curious.
Maybe at the end.
Okay. And then Saint Isidore, again, I've never heard of Saint Isidore, and I'm not like super well known about, I don't know saints really at all, but I looked up Saint Isidore, and there's two, according to franciscanmedia.org. There's Saint Isidore the farmer, and he was known for his love of the poor. And there's accounts of him miraculously supplying people with food. He had a great concern for the proper treatment of animals. But there's also Saint Isidore of Seville. And his life was a time of conflict and growth for the church in Spain. Spain was split in two, and he helped reunite Spain, making it a center of culture and learning. He's sometimes called the schoolmaster of the Middle Ages. And then at the end of like the little spiel about him at the website, it said something that I thought like related to the story. So it said, our society can well use Isidore's spirit of combining learning and holiness. Loving, understanding, and knowledge can heal and bring a broken people back together. People who are swamped by riches and overwhelmed by scientific and technological advances can lose much of their understanding and love for one another, which I feel like the Phantom Scythe was formed to try to bring people together and to get rid of the society where like they just care about riches and people who are poor don't matter. But then they kind of lost that along the way and became really corrupt. So I don't know if the creators put that much thought into the street names, but I just thought I'd bring that.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Like the names and their meanings relate way too much to the story to be coincidence.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, the part about Saint Isidore being concerned about the poor, that I think definitely relates to this, because we don't know much about this woman. Like, we don't know. This is why I have, like, from a narration perspective, and again, this relates to what happens later, I'm not quite sure what their intention is with the story. But if it's meant to highlight the plight of the poor, then the Saint Isidore thing would make sense.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the woman, I think she would definitely come from a more poor area. Her clothes aren't as clean as like Lauren or Will's or Kim's that we usually see them in. So I think it is possible to say that her stealing the jewelry was out of desperation. Normal food.
Oh,
Because small bits wouldn't be sustainable over a long period of time.
My internet cut out and I didn't hear a lot of what you said, but okay.
Oh,
it's fine. I don't know, whatever. Hopefully it got recorded.
I heard you, Fwoot.
Okay.
Look, on my end, it still looks like it's recording, so I think we're okay.
Okay. So should we move on to the next part?
Yep.
Okay. So the police car arrives. Looks like they're putting her in it. They're, signing some papers, doing their ever-dreaded paperwork. And then Will and Lauren are just, back there in the alley, looking very fine, by the way. They look really good. And Will kind of has this stoic look on his face at this point, but you can tell he's disturbed. And Lauren's observing it, and she understands that he's feeling, morose. And she decides to distract him. She's like, let's hurry before Kim takes over the entire city. She's trying to cheer him up. And he's like, in step. And then we get here, in step, limp meat bags. And that would be Kim. And Will just like,
now we know.
Yeah.
Now we know like what Kim does with just a little bit of authority, just a little bit of power.
Yeah. So, and she has definitely distracted him. She's achieved her objective. And he says, or before she starts hunting down watermelons instead of directing the patrol. And we have a figure in back of them. We just see now like the two of them laughing and walking along, and we see a figure in black behind them. We see him repeatedly over the next couple of panels. And Lauren says to him, hey, Will, I know you don't like to talk about your problems, but something's been bothering you lately, right? And then she says, I had a lot on my mind too. She like puts her hand over her face.
And this is a flashback, right?
Mm-hmm. To an
this
earlier
panel.
Scene in the, yeah, it was a flashback to an earlier scene in the police department.
Yeah, because Kim came over to Lauren and was like, why didn't you sleep? And she's like, I had a lot on my mind. And then Will, he didn't sleep either. And he said, I had a lot on my mind too. Yeah. So Lauren's been thinking about this. She's been thinking about like, what is Will thinking about? Why is he so bothered?
I love this panel. I love how there's the, Soph and Soph, I guess, is so capable of expressing his emotions, because Lauren's saying, is there anything I can do to help? And you kind of see Will a little bit frozen, because I think he's just also not used to unburdening his feelings, and he's used to keeping things inside. And he's like a little bit of a conflict. Like, he has pain, but he doesn't want to share it. And like, he's like surprised that someone's asking him about it. And it's just so painful to see. Like it's hard enough that human beings go through stuff, and but then to have that additional burden of not sharing it is just, it's hard to see someone do that.
And it's interesting that you say that he's frozen, because I think the weather in this scene is like reflects Will's inner state. It's snowing, it's like it's cold, it's lightly snowing, and then so you imagine it's freezing, and then he freezes himself. Like Lauren asks that question and he freezes. Ah, sweet boy. Oh. Then he says, thanks, Lauren. Well, I won't lie and say nothing is wrong, but I'll be fine. And then his eyes go black. He like steals himself. So don't worry, I'll handle it.
And what the mask does is so symbolic, because there are times when the authors show us through the mask and they kind of show us what's behind the mask. But now when he puts on a smile and he says, I'll be fine. And the mask goes back to being opaque. And he's like, that's him. He's putting on his mask. He's putting his smile back on. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And looking at the lighting in these two panels as well. Thanks, Lauren. Most of his face is in the light. But then, I'll be fine. Most of his face is in the dark. He's like really, really closing himself off.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren is not dumb. Sorry, Fwoot, what were we going to say?
Sorry. I was going to say that like right after Will goes back into the dark, Lauren kind of, the panels of the bottom half of her mouth become darker. But then in the next panel, she's in the light while Will is in the dark. Also a little interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And Lauren understands that he's, lying to her. And he says, well, not lying, but he's not opening up. And she says, she thinks those words, that smile, he never lies, and she has this grin set to her mouth. And she says, she kind of doesn't look away from him, but she has this very concerned look. She doesn't look at him. And she said, is it your mother? Aww. And poor Will, he still has a smile on his face, and he says, and again, he's still a mask. Like Lauren is, we see through her mask, but his mask is opaque. And he says, among other things, yes. Oh, and then he turns away and he says, sorry, and he doesn't want to talk about it. And Lauren goes and pats him on the back. And she says, I know. Oh.
Yeah. It's hard. But it's interesting. One of the top comments to this episode is that Lauren wants Will to like open up and break down his walls, but she won't do that for herself. But she can see, but she also doesn't really give Will the chance to break it down. I mean, she asks him about it and he decides not to, he doesn't want to talk about it, she can tell. So she like gives him a really easy, fast out, like that pat on the shoulder. I know it was a very tentative attempt, I think, to get him to open up. And when he gave her the slightest bit of resistance, she said, okay, that's fine. I know. That's okay.
I think it's also because Lauren just knows that he is not ready for it. And so she could try, but she also doesn't want to push him out of his comfort zone. Yeah.
Because they are really good friends. They know each other really well. And they're also at work. So it's not like the best place to open up.
You know, it's interesting that like when Lauren says it's okay, I know if you don't want to talk about it, I understand you don't have to. It's funny because I actually view that as like a mark of like respect and respecting someone's boundaries, because I'm a very pushy person, and like my natural inclination is like, no, open up, talk about it, tell me. And then one thing I've had to work on myself is like understanding like not everyone is ready when you're ready, you know, like you have to give people time and space. So it's funny that like what I consider like something that I worked hard on to be virtuous and like not push people, you're like, oh, she's like taking the easy way out, just not letting, you know, not giving him a chance. So, but yeah, I can understand it's always a balance. Like sometimes maybe you should push people, you know, a little bit, like maybe they're doing things that aren't healthy for them. And like, you should push them, hey, just open up a little, or whatever the situation is.
Yeah, I could see that she's just being really respectful of him. Could be, definitely. But she decides to change the topic. You know what? We should hang out one of these days. It'll take your mind off of things at least. And he says, that's a great idea. I'm sure a little distraction wouldn't hurt you either.
Now we're back to being transparent, by the way.
Yes, and they're both in the light. I don't know how to say this word. Recidivist. Thank you. Recidivist.
I thought recidivist means someone who goes back to doing their bad habits. Recidivist, yes. Convicted criminal who repeatedly. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's saying that she just won't stop being a workaholic. And then she says, I'm afraid we'll have to go in disguise, or the women of the precinct will try to burn me at the stake.
Oh, so Will's a hot item at work. Much desired.
And he says, ha ha ha, then I'd fear for them and not for you. And it's nice to see him laughing. It's nice to see him like actually genuinely smiling.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Will and Lauren have had moments like this before. And it's obvious that Lauren knows how to cheer Will up and how she is able to make fun of the other aspects of what they've experienced, which in this case are Will being the precinct prince and all the ladies being enamored with him.
Because he's both gentlemanly and handsome and smart and nice. Like he's a good package. Oh, sweet.
Yeah, it's funny though. Will says, then I'd fear for them and not for you. Like it says a little bit about Lauren too.
Right. Yeah, resident hot-tempered.
Yeah.
Person. Oh, and yeah, so they walk down. All right, let's go. And there's some beautiful lighting of, you know, them going off in the light, and he's heading off first, and there's snow falling. And Lauren kind of hangs back a bit, and then she thinks to herself, when will you finally let down your walls, Will? Which is a super worried look on her face. We held them up for so long, and we flash back to little baby Will, and he's like, I'll, now there's teenage Will, handle, now there's current Will, it. And he always has that fake smile on his face, and he just shoves it down. So when I met my husband, by the way, he was like, when I have a negative emotion and when I have something that hurts me, I just shove it down. And I thought he was joking because my husband's a huge joker. And then I realized, no, he was 100% accurate. That's what he does with his negative feelings. So yeah, so that's like Will. Oh, she says you need to break them.
Oh yeah, go ahead. You need to break them. And there's this really sad panel of Will walking away with his back turned to our perspective, and there's like a reflection of him, and it's just darkness and snow and cold, and he's by himself, and it's so sad. So you need to break them. Yeah, and this is where I think the music stops. Like the track is for Will. How distant Will is to everyone around him.
Oh, baby.
Yeah. Something interesting though is how when Will is leaving, he is walking into the light, whereas Lauren is staying behind in the darkness, and it's almost as if they switch positions. And I think it's ironic because I think Lauren's commentary on Will applies a lot to herself, which is why she is still in the shadow.
You just blew my mind a little bit, Fwoot. Oh my gosh.
There's an old like Jewish phrase called 𝗪𝗂𝗍𝗵𝗪 that you only see the faults that you yourself have. So yeah, that's her.
Yeah, that's definitely something I learned in music therapy school. We just project all the time. A lot of the time we're just mirrors for each other. So like what we see in other people that we like are things that we like about ourselves. What we see in other people we don't like are things that we don't like about ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
This idea, you need to break them, the walls, before they break you. I think also like the idea of Will holding up all these walls, and I can think of at least 4 different things that he is carrying all to, like, he won't open up about, and I won't get into spoilers, but like he has several things that he is carrying by himself. So he's probably really strong. He's probably like, you know, that's a lot to carry by yourself, but like the teeniest little thing can make everything come crumbling down. And he's like really strong, but also in that same position, he's also really fragile, because if anything changes or shifts in a way that isn't safe, then he could be like buried by it.
Mm-hmm. Will is a bit of a perfectionist, it seems like, since he's like lieutenant and he's pretty strict with his coworkers. He does seem to be very focused on being the best and being good at it. So I think that when things don't go how he expects them to go, and when things don't go in positive ways, it can be very harmful to him.
Yep. When people have high expectations, sometimes the smallest thing can like trigger them and make them so unhappy. Whereas some people are more like go with the flow. They're like, yeah, whatever. Okay, this didn't work out, whatever. You know, but he expects everything to be well, and he can get very stressed out over small things. You know, which we'll definitely see. Baby. So now we continue. They, you know, end that scene, and we go to, they're emerging from the alleyway. They go back into the sunlight, right? It's cheerful again. And Kim is there eating her watermelon. Lucas is there, and I think it's Harvey maybe. And Kim just smacks, she pulls her hands out and either intentionally or unintentionally just smacks Will in the face. And you know, I guess that's her way of greeting them. And now they're falling in line, and you know, there's Lucas and Lauren, and somebody grabs Lauren's arm. Yeah. And that was probably the shadowy figure that we saw in back before, earlier in their episode. And that was the cliffhanger of this episode.
Yeah. Right. We don't know. We can infer that it was maybe Lauren because she's at the back of the line.
Mm-hmm. And also there was that weird man from the other episode who was taking photos of her.
Yeah, exactly. So cliffhanger. And our creator's note is, eating a watermelon outside in plain winter is definitely the most responsible decision Kim has ever made in her life.
I'm just surprised that she can find good watermelon in winter in Ardhalis.
She will do anything for that. she begs, bribes, steals. Probably not, but whatever. Well, this episode showed us a lot about Will. It was definitely very much about him and his character.
And I think it explains some of his interactions with people in earlier episodes. So many of you have called Will like boring and he's like not creative.
I said that. Well,
there's so much Will hate.
But I don't think it's untrue. Right. I just think that this kind of explains it, because he like does not have room in his brain to be able to think creatively or to be able to like be spontaneous or anything. Like he's got so much pressure that he puts on himself and from other people around him that he just like, just the facts, just what I need to do. I can only handle that and nothing else.
I think he can be creative, but I think he's just a more logical person, and the way he does things, he abides by a very specific set of rules and just guidelines for how he does things. And I think, he's not very spontaneous. He likes things to be very set and already organized, so he can follow them and he doesn't have to make his own way. But I think he can be creative. He just doesn't want to be, and he doesn't need to be at this point. He's not very open to new things.
I can so picture, like, let's say Will and Kim's honeymoon, which will happen in the future, where Kim's like, okay, Will, you sit here, you try this. This is delicious. You have to try this. You just sit here. I'll bring you stuff to try, okay? Being like overwhelmed.
Will not being able to like handle spice is literally one of my favorite like fandom jokes ever.
Yep.
I don't remember that. That's funny.
Oh, it's bigger on the Discord server, so I'm not sure if you're there.
Oh, no.
But there have been some very funny memes to come out of it.
Nice.
Yep. Well, do we have closing thoughts on this chapter?
A very underrated chapter.
It really makes you feel for Will a lot.
Oh, yeah. It is one of the more Will-centric episodes of season 1, which are pretty rare, admittedly, since season 1's way more focused on Kieran and Lauren and the whole loon thing. So we don't see much of Kim and Will, so it's a nice fresh breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and you said something, I forget who, Mindy or Fwoot, one of you said something about like the importance of platonic friendships. Like this is also like how I don't see that a whole lot. Just like, Lauren, woman, Will, male, man, but they're friends. There's nothing romantic between them. They're just really, really, really good friends, which I think is really sweet.
Let's normalize male-female friendships.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's why I kind of prefer Kieran and Lauren as friends over like romantic, because I can see them becoming romantic, but I also think that they have a pretty solid friendship right now. And like, yes, their relationship could continue and it could develop further, but honestly, it doesn't need to be. They're already pretty good right now as is.
Yeah, I personally don't want Kieran and Lauren to be romantically involved, because I feel like their relationship is based off of like trauma. I don't think it would be very healthy.
Well,
wow,
the ideal thing is that they work through it. But yeah, that's definitely not. That's a common thought. But by the way, there are lots of relationships that are based on mutual trauma. One thing I realized in life, one of the big things I realized with my marriage was that people are attracted to each other not only for their positive attributes, but also for the negative attributes. Like there were things that I clicked with my husband very consciously. There were things that I was 100%, I knew what I wanted and I searched for it and I got it. And then there were things that I realized years later, I was like, oh shizzle, I clicked with my husband for a bunch of negative reasons that like was attracted to him for, that he was attracted to me for the same reason as well, for the opposite reason. And I was like, whoa, that was an unhealthy thing about us that drew us to each other. So it's very, very interesting, because you need someone who complements your negative traits as well. So yeah, it can happen.
That's true. what I mean specifically is that like they're going through this trauma together, and so like they're bonded through this trauma of being Loon and like trying to take down the Phantom Scythe, and there comes a lot of like violence and stuff from that. And I forget what the term in psychology is exactly, but like having a relationship that's based off of like really intense emotions over one period of time doesn't usually last long term. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, because at this point, if the Phantom Scythe, you know, if Loon is successful and they do take down the Phantom Scythe, what do they do next? They part ways and they move on with their lives, maybe as heroes, maybe not, depends if they survive. But yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think that the circumstances of Loon are really the best to be developing a long-term romantic relationship, especially one that's healthy.
Interesting is that I do realize like what bonds them, like they're very similar in many ways, but what bonds them is their obsession with taking down the leader / Phantom Scythe and what it has made them become. Because both of them are they have similarities in their traits. They're very stubborn, they're very independent, they're very strong, they're very like capable, they're clever. But a lot of those things developed because of their lifelong, and I don't know exactly, we don't know Kieran's history exactly, so I don't know when it started, but they've developed because of their lifelong obsession with unsettled business. They both have this unhealed trauma from their childhood that's driving them forward. So they're very, very similar in many ways, but you're right. Like, what would they be? I don't know. We don't even know what kind of people they would be if they didn't have this, right? They wouldn't be the same person. It's like, it's impossible to tell. But yeah, it's very interesting. Like they're very similar because of their shared messed upness. And yeah, what would they be without it?
I mean, I could see them being romantic in like a normal setting, and they just give me very right person, wrong time trope like vibes, like, you know, that trope. So I think in another world where the Phantom Scythe wasn't a thing and they just like, you know, coincidentally met, I think it could work out. We can't really know, because a lot of, again, what Mindy said, a lot of who they are today was because of what they experienced, so we don't really know how compatible they would be. But if it wasn't too different, I could see them like being romantic in another setting.
Yeah, same.
It was interesting to see, like, because you know, the fact that they do have a similar reaction to their experiences does show that I think their personalities probably are similar to begin with, right? Because if not everyone would react like Lauren reacts. Some people would move on, some people would be despairing and never do anything about it, but Lauren's very decisive. She tries to take action, she's compelled forward, and Kieran also. So I do think that the fact that they did react in a similar way to their circumstances does show that they started with similar material, which, you know, theoretically, if they wouldn't have had that situation, they still would have been attracted to each other. But yeah, it's fun speculation, right? You can never extract a personality out of a person's experiences. They always interact. I know in one of my undergrad psychology classes, the professor was like, there's this common myth, nature versus nurture. And he says that it's impossible because it's always the interaction of the two. You cannot extricate one from the other. They affect each other and influence each other. So they're inextricable. And I thought about that a lot because, you know, I mean, at some point, hopefully every thinking human being reflects upon their personality and how it's been formed by their experiences. And you just realize you could drive yourself in circles because you can never take one out of the other. You are who you are because of both of your nature and your nurture.
I think nature versus nurture and that idea, I like how it's applied to Loki, but I think there's another character that comes like about 10 episodes from now that it really applies to, and that would be very interesting to analyze with that mindset. So I'm very excited for when we finally get to do them.
All right. Well, let's end the episode on that note. So that we can, not because we're going to do that episode right now, but just as a general thing of like closure and moving on. Yep. Well, thank you so much. This was great as usual, and I appreciate
you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah, great discussion. I feel bad because Laura brought notes and I just
this is what I do every time. That's my process.
Don't feel bad, it's fine. Everyone has their style and you are who you are, right? So, trust me, you're fine. You bring plenty of relevant discussion without notes. It's okay, everyone has their approach.
Yeah.
All right, well, good night. Thanks so much. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.